Hi all, welcome to the third part of Network Connectivity Center. In this part, we are going to talk about producer VPC spokes that is in preview state as of this recording. So basically, in this, like if you have a VPC network that consumes a service from a producer network in other project through VPC network pairing, so we can use NCC producer VPC spoke to make service reachable by other networks. So what will happen? Suppose you have created a private service access inside a VPC network, and that private service access is being used by your SQL or your file store. So if you want to share that specific SQL or your file stored with other VPCs, you can use this producer VPC spokes. So in that, if you remember, if you don't know, you can check out my previous videos what it is. But if you know, it will be very easy to understand. So when we create a private service access with Google, it will create a VPC pairing connection between our project, between our VPC and its Google VPC. So basically this Google VPC, we don't have any access. It is in Google project and we cannot access it, but it will create a VPC pairing connection so that we can access resources that is being created in this site, this specific VPC, or we can say project. So if you want to share these all resources which has been created like your SQL, and if you want that SQL can be accessed by another projects or another VPC networks via private IP, you can use this network connectivity have with producer VPC spokes. We will see how to do that. So when we create a producer VPC spokes, we have to provide the following details. The first of all, the existing VPC spoke of your consumer network that is paired with the producer network. So when we do this, first of all, we have to create a VPC spoke, and that VPC spoke for that network which is already being paired with your like service producer network. So this is our consumer network, like this is our VPC network that is being used services from this producer network. So first of all, we have to add this specific VPC as a VPC spoke to our network connectivity hub. Once it is added, then only we can create a producer VPC spoke. And once it's done, we have to provide also share the VPC like pairing connection, name of the pairing connection. It can be if you are creating by SCLI. After that, once it's done, Network Connectivity Center uses that information to identify the VPC network of the service producer, and it adds a corresponding producer VPC spoke to a hub in your project. So once you share that information, it will like provide all that, find that producer VPC network, and it will add that like network information in our route table. After the producer VPC spoke is a part of the hub, its subnet routes are exported and the other spokes on that hub can access its services. So once it is a part of this, our producer VPC is a part of our hub. So these other networks, it can be in the same project, different organization or anywhere, can access our producer network via network connectivity hub, because it share a route table, create a route table and share with all the VPCs. And if there are any Google services that rely on dynamic routes, so that are not supported, like producer VPC spokes export only subnet routes. Hope you understood this, and there are some unique properties. Let's see what are these for producer VPC spokes. So there's a dependency first of all. So creating a producer VPC spoke requires that you have the following existing resources and connections. First thing is that a VPC network that consume a supported service from a producer VPC network to network peering. So there must be a already running like network peering connection, and after that a consumer VPC network is a VPC spoke on the hub. So and this consumer VPC network must be a VPC spoke, otherwise if until you create this VPC spoke, this consumer network as a VPC spoke, you can't add this producer VPC spoke, because these both are dependent on each, like this is dependent on this. So you have to make sure that first you add this consumer network as a VPC spoke. After that, there are some creation steps. So we, like when you create a producer VPC spoke, you don't enter the service producer network directly. Instead, we enter the VPC spoke of your consumer network that is paired with the producer network. So we have to provide this consumer network VPC spoke, and after that the name of the pairing connection is creating by CLI. And if your hub is configured for star topology, so the producer VPC spoke and its corresponding VPC spoke must belong to the same group. So that means this consumer network and this producer network must be in the same group. If you remember from the last videos, in like mesh topology, there is only one group that is default, and in the star topology, there are two groups, edge and center. So if you put your like producer VPC spoke in the center, so your consumer one also in the center only. If you put in edge, so both will be in the edge groups. And for the resource location, the service producer VPC network is in a producer owned project that you don't have access to. So basically, this network, it is a producer VPC network, is always in the Google Cloud project. That is, we cannot access it. It is like running behind the scenes in the Google network, Google project, this network. And the producer VPC spoke resource created in your project. And this is always the same project at the VPC spoke of your peered consumer network. So these all the things that consumer network and all these things will always be created in our own project. Suppose there is one project in that you will create this network and create this consumer pairing like network pairing connection also. And there are some connectivity exceptions also there, like the producer VPC spoke and other VPC spokes cannot establish connectivity. So suppose this is our one producer VPC spoke and there will be one more producer VPC spoke. So these both producer VPC spokes cannot communicate with each other, and the producer VPC spoke and the VPC spoke of its peered consumer network that we enter at the creation time, basically these both. Instead, these two networks remain connected through the existing VPC pairing connections. So basically, these will always be communicated by pairing connection, and all other use NCC hub like this. So basically, these will use this pairing connection always. So basically, we have to avoid overlap with allocated IP ranges. So when we like NCC doesn't check for overlaps with allocated IP ranges. So if you know, when we create a private service access, we have to allocate some IP ranges. So that NCC doesn't check. We have to make sure that the IP address range of the VPC spokes on your hub don't overlap with an allocated IP ranges configured for the private service access. And when you create a producer VPC spoke, you provide the following things like, so whenever you create this, and we have to make sure this that the private service access range doesn't overlap with any of the VPC. So you have to make sure like NCC doesn't check that. And after that, if your VPC spokes overlap with the allocated IP ranges, so private service access might not be able to create new resources like new SQL servers or file store when needed, and you will get an error. To resolve this, you can expand or modify the allocated IP ranges. That's the only thing. So let's go to console and we will see, and you will get a better picture. So I'm in my console. So let's go to my first project, and that is my VPC. So there's only one subnet. So to create a private service access, we have to go here, private service access, and we have to click on allocate IP ranges. So this IP ranges, like your NC doesn't check whether it is overlapping or not. So make sure what you are doing. So let's give it as a name SQL1, and after that you have the two options whether you can provide a custom range. So if you don't want that any automatic range will overlap with your existing range, go with custom, and otherwise you can go automatic also, and we will provide 24/24 and click on allocate. So Google will allocate me IP address. So there's one range, so let's allocate one more range. Let's name it SQL2, and again automatic, let's take it /24 only and click on allocate. For SQL we need minimum /24, otherwise it will not work. So as of now it has been two range we have created, and now we have to go to private service connection. So we will click on create connection. So there are three, like Google Cloud Platform, this is one more, and you can see the that service networking, this you can check it, that is some different and this is some different. It is creating a connection with Google APIs.com, and it is creating for like Junix.net, I don't know, but maybe new service they are introduced. After that we can create with NetApp also. So we will go with Google APIs one, and we have to select the IP ranges which we want to use. We will click on OK and we will connect. So behind the scenes, what is it will do? It will create a peering connection between this VPC network and your Google VPC network that is running in Google project, and that we cannot access. So we can do anything in this VPC network only. So let it create the VPC connection. After that, we will create a SQL server. So we can see our private service connection has been created. Now if you want export custom routes, you can enable it. We don't need. And if you go to VPC network pairing, we will see one pairing connection is already there. We can see how this is our project, and this is the paired VPC network, that is service networking. So basically, you have to all like need to enable service networking API also before that. So this is that Google project that we can't access and all that. If you go inside that, mm, you can see all the routes and all that. So these are the two routes in my first project VPC one. This is my subnet and this is the default range, all that routes. And let's go back to our VPC networks. And now we will go to SQL and we will create a SQL. So let's create instance with my free credits and we will choose SQL. After that, I will go with enterprise. You can choose like development if you don't want to waste your money in like this is testing. Maybe if you are doing also a testing only, we can provide it any name like testing one, and after that password. You can choose a region. I am going with a single zone. After that, we will customize it more, and in the machine configuration, I will go with 2 CPU 8 GB. And after that, in the connections, I will basically disable public IP. I don't need a public IP. I want to assign a private IP. So basically, it will assign an internal IP and Google hosted VPC IP address. And we have to choose the VPC network. So after that, we choose the VPC network. It will say like private service access is enabled for your project, and if it is not enabled, you can enable it from here also. After that, it will show the allocated IP ranges which we have used that time. Again, you can use automatically assigned IP range, but I have already two range, so I will click on this SQL first range, and this is coming from here. If we go to here, private service access, these are the ranges which is showing there. So we will check for the first one, and rest looks good. And let's click on create instance. So it will take about 5 minutes to create it. My SQL instance has been created. Now let's go and let's see its private IP. This is the private IP 1062.181.3, and this IP came from that allocated IP range only. And I have a VM that is running in this VPC, first project VPC 3. And if you go and check its IP range, and we can see it has IP range 3.0, and this is that VM that is running in that the same VPC. So we can see it is running that VPC. So if we try to access now that SQL from this VPC, that doesn't have any connectivity as of now. So let's see what will happen. And let's go and so this is the command mysql -n. This is my private IP of the SQL. This is user root and -p for we have to enter the password. So let me enter the password. We will see it will try to like make a connection, but it will not connect eventually because we don't have any connectivity as of now. So let's create a connectivity now and we will see how it works. So we are back into our network connectivity hub, and let's create a new hub, and let's call it mesh hub, because and after that we will use the mesh topology only. If you want, you can use star also. And after that we will click on next and we will create a hub basically first. So our hub has been created. Now let's create spokes for it and we will click on add spokes. So I'm doing this on my first project as of now, and I will choose my current hub, that is this one. After that, I can choose like producer VPC network as of now, and let's try what will happen. And we have to provide a spoke name, but here we can see it is asking a consumer VPC spoke, and if we click here, we can see there is no consumer VPC spoke as of now. So that's why we have to first create a consumer VPC spoke. After that, only we can create a producer VPC spoke. So let's click on VPC network and we will provide it as a name. So let's go back and copy our VPC network name. So this is my first project, in that I have created a connection. I will provide the same name here. And after that, this is my network first project, and I will click on done. You can choose the filter option, but I have covered that on my previous videos. I will click on create. Also, it is in auto accept. So it doesn't need any approval from me to like allow this spoke into our hub. We have discussed all these things in my previous two parts. You can check out that part if you don't know about that. It has been, my spoke has been added into my hub, and now let's add producer VPC spoke. So let's click on spokes and click on add spokes and choose the same only mesh and click on next step. Now we have to choose producer VPC network and we have to provide a name. So let's provide it like my SQL. So we will remember why we have created this. You can provide any name. See, it is already showing that consumer VPC spoke, but it is not showing previously. So this is our first project VPC one. So where we will click on this. This is happening all because we have a peering connection between like our consumer and producer. To create a connection, to create this VPC like producer VPC spoke, we have to provide like which VPC is being connected. So here we will say this is our consumer VPC that is being providing peering connection or like connected with producer VPC. So we will add, after that, in that also you can include filters also like producer VPC spoke filters. And if you want to exclude anything, this is all the same thing which we have discussed. So we will click on done and we will click on create. So this is the same diagram which we have done as of now. And if we see, first of all, we have a VPC network, then we have created a peering connection that is created automatically between producer network, that is Google. Then we created a VPC spoke for this consumer network. Then we created a producer VPC spoke that requires that this consumer network must be as a VPC spoke. Until we create this consumer network as a VPC spoke, we can't create producer VPC spokes. These two parts has been done. Now we will add these two more networks and we will see whether we are able to connect to this or not, our like SQL instance via NCC. So we can see it has been done, and if we go inside now and click on spokes, we can see there are two spokes. One is VPC network and other is producer VPC networks. Even if we click on routes and we can see if we can go in any region. Let's go to here and we can see there are two routes now, one 1062.181.0 and 192.160.1.0. So 1.0 is coming if we go inside this VPC. So this is the 1.0 which is coming from here, and one is coming from here, private service access. This one 181.0, and you will notice that this network will not come until we use this network. So once we start using this network, let's we use any file store or SQL in this networks, then this network will automatically reflect in our route table. Until we do that, it will not reflect. So now do one thing, we will create one more spoke for our VPC project 3, and that is this project in which my VM is running. So we'll after that we will try to reestablish the connectivity between my this VM to our SQL. So let's go to our NCC. We will click on spokes, click on add spokes, and we will choose the hub. Click on next step. VPC network name we have to provide. Let's copy this only. First project VPC 3. After that VPC network, this first project VPC 3, no filters as of now. Click on done and we will click on create. So our third spoke is also added, and if we try now to check connectivity, so if we go back to our this VPC, last time it will give a connection error like we cannot connect. Now let's try the same thing and provide the password. We can see I am able to connect to my SQL. So that's how this basically works, producer VPC spokes. So now let's do the same thing and let's go to our this second project, and I will create a spoke here also. I will click on add spokes. Before doing that, I will show you I have a VM running in this uh, second project VPC1 VM, and let's see in which network it is running. So if we come down, we can see it is running in second project VPC1, that is this one, and I will add this as a spoke, and this is another project I have to provide my project ID, and after that I have to provide my hub name also, and hub name is, let's see what is the name, that is mesh hub. and that's it, and click on next steps. We have to provide a VPC network. We can do that all that thing here also, that to produce a VPC network and all that, but if we have configuration in this project, but we have in separate project, you can do anywhere. So, and you can share that your SQL to another project, like vice versa. And right now doing what we are doing, we can do opposite of that also. So like first of all we add this consumer and that and producer. So as of now we are doing only VPC network. We will provide a name. Let's copy that name here. So we have, after that we have to choose the VPC. This is my VPC. Click on done and click on create. So this spoke has been created. It is in inactive state because this project is not added in that auto acceptance list. So let's go into our hub and let's come out, and after that click on spokes and go to details, and after that we will accept this spoke. As of now we have four spokes and one of that it is producer VPC network. So let's go to my another VM, and this is my second project VM, and if I click try to access from that project my SQL, and I will enter the password, I can see I am able to connect. So this diagram now you can understand what we have done. So we can able to connect from this VPC also, this VPC also, and it can be on the same project, different, even different organization also will work. Just make sure before create a consumer VPC network as a VPC spoke, then only you can add your producer VPC network as a producer VPC spoke. And there must be a peering connection between them. Until there is no peering connection, it will not work. And that's all from this video. So make sure no overlapping subnets, that is the main thing here. And in the next video we will cover that remaining things which we can do with this, and what are the new like options we have. And if you have any questions, suggestions, just comment it down. I will share my email ID also. Just drop a mail, we will connect and see if you're facing any issues, if I know how to solve that. Okay then, thank you very much. I hope you like this video.